help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I am Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And welcome to the headquarters of 40 Days for Life, the now closed Planned Parenthood, where we first began right out behind me on the sidewalks. We are glad that you are joining us. We are going to review the Pride Month that was, or maybe wasn't. Is there a crack in the door of Pride Month that has been forced down our throat for far too long? We will cover that and more. Very significant topic as we see so many victories on the pro-life front at the statewide level since Roe was overturned, certainly at the national level and the global level as America leads the world in getting rid of abortion. We have a very robust pro-life movement in our country. Praise God for that. And other countries are taking note and adopting many of the things. One of the reasons why 40 Days for Life has spread to 64 countries around the world. So looking at Pride Month, looking at that movement, what it is doing right and what it is doing wrong is very beneficial to us in the pro-life movement because we can't really force our beliefs on people. We have to convert them. So we will discuss that. And to join me on this conversion podcast is somebody who has converted many people on many different issues, and that is Mr. Steve Carlin. Welcome.
Good to be here. I've tried to convert you on football teams, but
Yes.
It seems like I'm making zero progress on
Zero
that.
progress. I'm very stubborn, closed-minded, and intolerant when it
bigot,
comes to that.
maybe.
Yeah, very much. Big. I'm a Packer bigot. I don't like the Packers because of who they are. So that's like the definition. And so moving on, somebody who's not bigoted towards anyone is Heather Gardner. Good to be back.
Yeah, good to be back.
Great. I was just putting those words in your mouth
thanks.
because I want you to
Because it's a man's world.
like
Thanks.
it is man's world. We're covering that on another podcast with Heather. And so it's a man's world in the worst way. Steve, we've been getting a lot of feedback on the podcast. First off, we should say thank you. We have hit our 1 millionth download of the podcast.
1 million downloads!
Thank you to all those listeners. Thank you for the great comments and the great feedback. Thank you for the criticisms that we have received. We have, of course, ignored all of them. But thank you. Keep sending in the praise. Keep sending in the ridicule. It helps us make this podcast better. And the podcast is for you. And so it is your podcast. And we appreciate all the feedback. Big milestone with 1 million downloads. And a lot of that was launching on YouTube as well earlier this year. That helped get us over the hump.
It's been awesome to see the numbers come in because we keep getting these boosts and, Unplanned comes out and the numbers on the podcast go through the roof and we think, okay, well, we'll probably see a correction next year, but we didn't. We grew again and again. And then last year, the Dobbs decision, obviously, very important thing. And I thought, okay, well, we'd be able to match that. Well, 2023 is running ahead of 2022. So thank you to all the listeners for bringing us 1 million downloads and counting.
And counting, and I think the numbers have gone up significantly even since we hit that because we received unbelievable feedback on your professional wiffle ball career.
Yes, from time to time, as you know, we, around holidays, have a little more lighthearted topics. And for the 4th of July, we ended up on an extended...
What do you mean? Are you saying the Thanksgiving fried turkey it doesn't pertain to the building a culture of life?
That is our favorite episode. I don't know how the listeners feel
Nobody
about
listens
it,
to
the
it.
Thanksgiving
except
episode.
Our parents.
But for the 4th of July, we somehow ended up on a I wouldn't say extended, but a moderately length discussion of my wiffle ball team, the Rip City Thunder Ducks. And you had asked the listeners to provide their feedback. Does this make my stock go up in their books or go down that I am almost 40 years old? And still...
before you say this, I want to look into the camera. And it made my opinion of Steve Carlin and his stock, in my mind, skyrocket. I mean, you were like Tesla or like Netflix. You were just like an unbelievable skyrocket.
Bitcoin before it went down.
Exactly. That's what you were. That's what the rubber ducks?
Thunder Ducks.
Chicken duck? Thunder ducks.
Yeah.
Chicken duck.
Thunder. Sorry.
Turducken.
Turducken.
We've come full circle. We're a Thanksgiving
Take
episode.
this so seriously. Chicken duck. Who knows? It's a wiffle ball team.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so you had asked, and the readers have spoken. I won't provide all of the feedback, but
It's too overwhelming.
We could have a whole episode of it. But we got a great email from Paula who said, "This new knowledge greatly," this is in capitalization, by the way, "greatly increases my admiration for Steve Carlin. What could be more wholesome, healthy, and enjoyable than playing in a wiffle ball league?" Thank you.
It's like going to church.
If you're listening to the audio version, I think this is a good impetus to watch the YouTube one, at least from time to time, because she said, "Thank you for the gorgeous footage of the jerseys, games, trophy kissing, and fireworks that made me want to come to Wisconsin and watch the Thunder Ducks play." You're welcome anytime, Paula. We'll give you half off admission.
Literally one of the greatest emails I've ever seen come into our inbox.
I'm glad you feel that way because I certainly do, but I've got a vested interest in feedback on the Thunder Ducks.
Here's what that email was not, okay? And it easily could have been and would have been just as great. Love the wiffle ball team. Steve, you're great. Or this is hilarious. That is a multi-sentence, like thought out, using caps. She went back and proofread it. No errors. Grammatically accurate. Like she spent time on this email.
So you may or may not remember the name of our trophy is the Sempiternal Cup of Wonderment, which she managed to capture and spell correctly. And she said the name of
Just who remembers that?
She said the name of the trophy slew me, which I thought was a great use of past
great
tense.
diction.
Yeah,
Yes.
excellent.
Yes. Slew. Mm-hmm. Have you shared this with the Thunder Duck community?
The Thunder Duck community has been
Notified.
made known. Yeah.
Does the Thunder Duck community listen to this podcast? They better now.
Absolutely.
They're basically a sponsor. Oh my gosh. So this is a great reason to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Even though we offer all these great maps about what abortion looks like in a post-Roe America and all these statistics and Planned Parenthood's increased tax funding, all the great stuff that we try to provide you, the listener, on this podcast. Forget about all that if that doesn't get you to subscribe. You will see a picture of Steve in the uniform. It's required, I assume, the game. That's your game uniform?
That's my jersey, yeah.
What do you wear at practice? Just regular clothes?
Yes.
Is there practice?
Is there practice?
Do you have to practice for wiffle ball?
I-
Is it
well,
like a natural
I'm getting-
gift?
I'm
Everybody
getting
can
up
play
there in years.
wiffle ball.
No, I gotta, at a certain age, the bat slows down a little bit. You have a hard time picking up the curveballs, that sort of thing. So I gotta put in a little bit of work in the off season to stay in game shape.
Okay, we've all given you flack about all the great movies you've never seen. This will break my heart. Surely, as you're reminiscing on the Thunder Ducks, you've seen The Natural with Robert Redford.
That may be the one baseball movie I have not seen.
Oh, it's the best
Okay.
baseball movie. You've seen it?
I've never heard of it.
Phenomenal movie. Great American movie, The Natural.
All right.
I'll put it on the list.
Robert
go.
Duvall. It's a great movie. And your Thunder Duck glory, I can't even tell you, I can't say anything about the ending of the movie, but it's awesome.
We got our homework.
We've got our assignment, yeah.
The Natural. Go watch it. Great summer movie too. Not for the little kids, but
Okay.
good. Nothing like horrible in it, but just, it's PG-13. So, but a good movie, great sports movie, great father-son movie,
Okay.
and great baseball movie, I guess, in your brain, you can translate that into a great wiffle ball movie.
You had me at baseball.
Okay.
I was
The fact that y'all practice is something I wish we could talk about.
The great
more.
thing is my brother, he and his brother-in-law built this field, and he was going to go out and play one night and found a youth sports team had come over and was using it for their practice. So he couldn't play in his own wiffle ball park because like the Greenville, Wisconsin 9 and 10-year-old Little League team had claimed the field for practice. So.
And he didn't have the heart to throw him off.
I think he did, but it's on his in-laws' property, and they had to like maintain decorum and human decency.
It's so that the neighborhood kids did, because your brother was ready to be like, hey, you little punks,
Yeah.
we got a game this weekend. I don't care about your stupid Little League. We got a wiffle ball tournament coming
He is
up.
the Maine Lobsters, by the way.
Oh, okay.
For those who are wondering.
They're the Maine lobsters. Is it spelled the way the state is?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So they just totally adopt that. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, my word. That is absolute gold. I don't know how to switch gears from that, but something
The exact opposite.
Paula said the Thunder Ducks was wholesome, I think. Was that a word?
Yeah.
What is not wholesome is the hijacking of June somehow, month of the Sacred Heart, by the way, of Jesus, into Pride Month. And something happened with Pride Month. I'll just say these are my stages, and y'all can correct me. Okay, it's introduced and no one pays attention to it. That's a mistake. It takes over. Everyone does it. All the corporations have their logo in it. You have, it's just the whole thing. It's overwhelming. Oh my gosh, you look up and we've just lost. This is like common. And it's entered this new stage of we don't care, leave us alone. You've gone over the top and now you're going after our kids. And there's a bunch of other things that we'll get into. But is that kind of are they going over the hill of the roller coaster for Pride Month?
Sure seems like it, Heather. What do you think? I've noticed some of that where, I mean, in Wisconsin, our summer is like 5 weeks long and 2 of them are in June. And so it's kind of sad to lose that to the rainbow flag, taken away from God's covenant with Noah. But to me, it seems like there's finally a little bit of backlash. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this at the end of July is we were talking about this issue. We talked about the Dodgers last week, and we just wanted to give put some distance behind it and kind of see, like, is this just a flash in the pan? Maybe somebody got mad at Bud Light in June, or is this sustained? And it seems as we get deeper into the summer, the momentum actually on the pro-family, pro-sanity side is continuing to accelerate.
Yeah. What's also interesting is we've talked about how it's it seems like a lot of this stuff is imploding because you've got way too many ideals that are clashing, and you just, like, these multiple realities can't exist all at the same time. One thing that I have to correct you on actually is it's not a pride flag anymore. That's past. It's Pride Progress.
Oh.
So it's actually not just a rainbow flag anymore. It's got multiple other colors. And actually, almost every day, probably at least every week during this past Pride Month, seeing a lot more of that in your face than we normally do from corporations. I saw a change in the flag almost every single time. There's lots of storefronts that would have like a flag sticker to let you know that they're pride friendly, but it's not pride friendly anymore. It's Pride Progress friendly. But this flag is ever evolving. And so it's going to be interesting to see next year, maybe, what they come up with. I don't know.
I saw this thing in the news where this guy painted his house Progress, I don't know, the rainbow colors. And he was very proud of the stand he was taking for LGBTQ equality. And the LGBTQ people came out and attacked him and said, you're missing some of the new colors. So he was in trouble for painting his house the wrong colors.
I think walking on the eggshells and then not realizing that as you walk on the eggshells, you're offending someone. So then you try to walk on more eggshells and then you just eventually fall through. And that's what's happening. I think the trans movement is crushing the homosexual agenda and they don't know what to do with it. I've mentioned on the podcast, I've had conversations with guys who live a gay lifestyle and they're in their 50s. They can't stand the trans movement because, as we've pointed out many times, gender is important to gay people. So I think that's a problem that they're imploding. I also think that the trans people are speaking for the homosexual community on the surface. So you see this, where people just aren't believing it, where a woman is winning Woman of the Year award, or it's just so aggressive. We're going to go in. We're going to tell your 5-year-old that if they want to be a girl, they can be. All that stuff is crazy land. And so I'm glad that we waited to do this podcast. It could be very knee-jerk. But the whole notion, first off, there's the notion that we have a month of just... I mean, if you're identifying as a gay and lesbian, it's a little bit of the pat on the head. Like, hey, your month is in June. Now leave us alone. Mm-hmm. It's why a lot of black people don't like Black History Month. Morgan Freeman's talked about that. We've heard Haywood talk about that. Like, it's this designated thing. So there's that part. But let's say, no. We need to recognize that their people have been persecuted, or whatever the argument is for it. It's not well implemented.
No.
It's very flamboyant. It's very in your face. It's very cynical, I think. It doesn't really celebrate pride. It doesn't celebrate homosexuality. It's more of an attack. It's become an attack on Christianity. It's become an attack on being straight. There's sort of this elevation, like we have pride in who we are. And you don't need a heterosexual Pride Month or just a marriage Pride Month. It just exists. So I think that the aggressiveness of it has hurt it over the years, and just the onslaught of most people who aren't religious, and people who are religious also, we don't care what you do with whoever you do it with. Like, just leave us alone.
Yeah, that's usually the sentiment that most people have. I know recently I was talking with a friend who was fed up. He works for a large corporation, and he said that his company was having a drag queen night, and the executives were very pissed off that people didn't show up for it. And I thought, maybe a technology company has nothing to do with having a drag queen night, and what do you expect from your employees? And he works with a lot of secular people. It's not just, he's not in a room full of, devout religious people. And so I think that that's just a good sign too, that they are clearly, like you said, they're forcing this. This is an attack, and it's not about acceptance or tolerating it. It's celebrating it with us. And we see videos. I know I saw videos of teachers running through classrooms with rainbow banners with their students for Pride Month. It probably must have been at the end of May or beginning of June when school was still in session. But just taking the day, instead of learning mathematics, we've got to run down the hallway and celebrate. And we've got like a little float that the kids are running through, and which is really just perverted. I mean, because if you actually stop to think about what this is about, it's, we want to celebrate where we like putting our genitals, if I'm going to be blunt.
That's what it is, though. But there's also like it's a downplaying it. Like, it's just a sexual perversion. Like, it's not anything special. And let's say you say, no, I believe any sexual activity is acceptable. There's no morality when it comes to sex. You can't say that it's a sexual perversion or it's disordered. That's a bunch of Christian propaganda. Okay, in that case, it's just a sexual preference. So is there going to be like a guys who like redheads month? Is there going to be a guys or women who sleep around on their husband month? Like, why do sexual preferences, to use their own term, number one, marry you as give you your identity, which is very sad and dangerous anytime a behavior becomes your identity, but is usually called addiction. But when your sexuality becomes your identity, and when you have to force that on everybody as somehow being like elevated, like, why can't it just be a sexual preference? Why can't it just be a sexual tendency? What a disordered tendency? Why can't it just be a sexual perversion? Why can't we just be sinners? Like, if we all were identified with our sins, none of us would have any hope about anything.
They're going to run out of room for more colors on the flag. It's what's going to happen. You're going to have the redhead triangle and the whatever, all those
The
things.
Thunder Duck line, like
No,
you want to
they're-
be included.
They're far away from that flag.
We're not
Far
including
away.
the Thunder Ducks in our movement.
No.
So it's
Wholesome.
Wholesome. That's right. Thank
Good,
you,
clean
Paula,
fun.
Paula's email. Okay, so here's how it played out. We got to get into this. Number one, the business backlash. I mean, all right, we went into 4th of July, whatever, a month ago. Seems like a long time ago. And I pulled the numbers. So when all this happened with Bud Light, it was 21% loss of sales, 24% loss of sales. And it kind of hovered there. It kind of went up to 25 when you went into Pride Month, which is very interesting. 4th of July, Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch explodes because people who don't normally drink beer drink their nasty light beer. So the numbers go up, baseball's in full swing, you just have a lot going on, and beer consumption goes up around the 4th. So Bud Light was expecting that kind of like recovery, like let's make it to the 4th of July. 4th of July comes and goes. Steve, down 29%.
Yeah, there were a lot of places where it was case of Bud Light, $15.99 with a $15.99 rebate, and it's full. And there were the videos online where the guy, I think this guy had a big party and he stocked his cooler with 3 beers and just like, even if it's free at a party, let's see what happens. And he went back 4 hours later and all the beer was gone except for the Bud Light. I don't know, we talked about this last week on the Dodgers podcast, but I just frankly can't get enough of this Bud Light story. I love it.
It's great. And it's really great because we never have this, frankly, as we're always just getting our heads kicked in the culture war when it comes to stuff like
conservatives.
Yes, we as in conservatives or Christians that take it halfway seriously. My favorite version of that is the guy who goes out where, I don't know what town it was, but big strip of like bars, okay? And he's got iced down Bud Light, and he's trying to give it away. And you can see there's people walking around and they're hammered. You know, it's just like they're at the level like, give me another one. You know,
people who are drinking hand sanitizer.
Yeah,
their
like Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm sure a famous Wisconsin beer. But all that, he cannot give one away.
They're hammered and they won't take a free beer?
The drunks won't drink Bud Light. And he's like, look, man, it's midnight. Like, it's hysterical. I'll send you the link. But like, it's this great link, and you're like, this guy's not sophisticated enough to like stage this. Like, this is happening. I don't think it was Nashville because it's not a conservative place. It was like a Minneapolis or one of these like mid-grade weird cities. We love Minneapolis, but you know what I mean? Like, this wasn't Huntsville, Alabama, okay? And you're just sitting there going, that's a problem, because they were the number one light beer, and you can go pull the numbers of the big winner was Coors Light. Miller Lite, I think, went up 21%. Coors went up 24%. Yuengling went up like 28%. Yuengling's the big winner. And Yuengling was the one that responded without responding. They tweeted out, like right at the height of it, the only thing you'll get from us is great American beer. That's it. Like, there's so much you can say without, I guess they're bigoted and they're racist and all this other stuff now, but it really, the Bud Light scandal is so great. They have handled it so poorly. As of 3 weeks ago, they finally had their former president come out and say the CEO needs to be fired. He has completely botched this. He's mismanaged it at every turn. I don't come out and call out employees as a former employee or say that somebody needs to be fired. I've never done this in my entire life. He was like on CNN. He's like, this is a board and shareholder issue. The ship is sinking, and he's done just complete incompetency.
And it's not just Bud Light, right? Target is taking a major hit and a sustained hit, and there's other companies too. And to me, one of the big sort of pieces of fallout that doesn't get talked about enough is it's not just what happens to Bud Light. It's not just what happens to Target. It's all the other companies and marketing people and CEOs that are watching. And when June comes around again next year, they're not going to be on the ship.
That's the point of this podcast, is because we see how, when we pass the 1-year anniversary of Dobbs, the attitude towards abortion at that anniversary versus a year ago. And a year ago, it was, this is war. We're not leaving. It's over. Storm the gates. And there's all these protests in D.C. We did the Dobbs event with Lila Rose and Students for Life, and we had Michael Knowles, and we had Mike Pence. Everybody's out at the Lincoln Memorial. What, 4 or 5 protesters?
And I think they left about 5 minutes into the rally.
That's the difference a year makes. It's going to be the opposite with Pride Month, because now I think Pride Month is like Drago from Rocky IV. It's just this like merciless creature that just overwhelms you no matter your beliefs. It's just like, he just crushes you. And Drago, eventually, Rocky gets a shot in. You've never seen the movie. It's terrible. And Drago starts to bleed. And like the whole thing is his trainer's yelling at him. He's just a man. He's not a machine. He can bleed. And that's what happened to Pride Month this year. It was like somebody actually said, we're not going to do this. And Pride Month started to just not be this untouchable monster, which is what it is. It's just, it goes out and devours everything that it encounters. Celebrities, stores, that's the woke movement. And they've done it the best with Pride Month. And now there's a chink in the armor, and next year, Dodgers. Are you having the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence? Bud Light. Are you doing a trans can? On Twitter, there was a huge graphic of all the corporations that last year had the rainbow as part of their logo. Major League Baseball was one. Apple was one. Big companies, Ford. All these companies, Coca-Cola was on there. Big companies. All of June last year, they make their logo the flag. This year, none of them. And it's like 30 major Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah, even Garth Brooks. I don't know what Garth Brooks was thinking, because this controversy was well underway, and he decided he's going to jump into it. And even he kind of did the like mealy mouth kind of back off type of thing.
He doesn't care about his friends in low places anymore.
No. Look, Garth Brooks, if you're watching the podcast, we love
your music.
Baton Rouge.
I know.
Great song, but we wish you well in your future endeavors.
Why are you doing this, Garth? So I'm wearing my George Strait t-shirt. But why, Garth? Why are you doing it? Just, he's Garth Brooks. And I love his music. He's always been kind of out there. But I mean, what good does it do? Why don't you recap that? Because I think people miss the Garth Brooks thing.
So he opened some bar or something like that in Nashville.
Friends in Low Places bar in
that's
Nashville.
the name of it. Yeah, that's right. And he said something to the effect of, we're going to serve all beers, including Bud Light, and any a-holes who won't drink Bud Light, they can go to someplace else. And the people said, we'll go someplace else. And they said, well, actually, I just think we need to be respectful toward each other. Like, well, that's a little bit of a different thing than calling your patrons a-holes.
Yeah.
And that's why we have to be logical about this, and we can't get caught in they're going to think I'm a bigot, or I'm going to get accused of this, is because that's the response. So if Bud Light put a guy on a can to celebrate him 365 days of being a girl, when he's not, and he never will be.
It's a gender equivalent of blackface.
It is, exactly.
This you brought something up like this recently too. This kind of makes me think of the Dixie Chicks when they had the big debacle 20 years ago because they just discredited completely the president of the United States in another country.
They were in England.
But okay, so you might have some people that agree with that, but where I think they went too far, even still, is when they came out and said, we don't want our fans to also have Toby Keith and Reba McEntire CDs in their multi-disc CD player. Like, we don't even want our CDs to share space with those people. And so basically, a-holes, screw you fans if you, and it's like, but that's kind of like the, remind me of the, it wasn't the Michael Jordan thing that Nike, conservatives like Nike too,
Republicans buy Nikes
Republicans
too.
It's like,
Republicans buy sneakers too.
Why are you alienating? Like, that's more than just taking a stand on something.
Jordan did an unbelievable job at staying out of it until BLM. He kind of got dragged into it and gave them $100 million. But he, for a long time, he's the biggest athlete in the history of the world. and he was able to stay out of politics. Now it's like nobody even knows you're some random point guard no one cares about, and you're like out there talking about some injustice, and you're like, do you even score double digits every night? So it's just one of those where it's so out of control. But the Reba McEntire, like, well, okay, Dixie Chicks, well, what kind of CDs can I have near yours?
Yeah.
Can I eat dairy?
Yeah.
Do you care if I have some pasta, or are you anti-carb? Do I need to go vegan to satisfy you? Let me listen to your stupid music and leave me alone. And that's the a-hole thing from Garth is, okay, I don't, this guy is a guy. Like, we're not going to celebrate mental illness in my house, and this is being forced on me. If I want to go drink a Coors Light or a Shiner Bock, I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm not an a-hole.
And here's what I think another phenomenon where that has worked in our favor is it hasn't just kind of turned people against Bud Light, against Garth Brooks, against Target, but it has fostered some actual Christian unity that I don't think was there in the past. You know, when the Dodgers did their honoring of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, you didn't just have Catholics out there. The response was led by Catholics, but you had Catholics, you had Jews, you had
Jewish
other
rabbi
Christians.
spoke.
Yeah, and so there were all sorts of great quotes. We had a rabbi, Michael Barclay, said, if you're anti-Catholic, you're anti-religion, you're anti-God. I got a problem with that. I think it's a wake-up call for us in a way.
Totally. We covered this a lot last week, so I won't get into it with the Dodger stuff, but we had Clayton Kershaw, who we criticized on the podcast, but he came out and he said, this is making fun of religion and all that. And then they promoted a Christian Day and sort of used him, and he should have taken a stronger stance, but whatever. You can listen to last week's podcast to get a review of that. But we need to put these on the screen. Pastor Robert Jeffries, who a lot of people love to hate, but he said this: Christians are right to boycott companies and organizations like MLB teams that try to cram their godless and offensive agendas down the throats of Americans.
I like it.
No room for error. You like the godless part.
Yeah.
The Dodgers are godless.
Basically.
Exactly. Okay. Brent Leatherwood of the Southern Baptist Convention. Another good Baptist. Excellent. I'm just saying that because producer John is Baptist, so we're giving a shout out to the Baptists. Amen. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, put down that beer. That's it. This is a family organization. That's right. What are you? It's a Coors Light.
It's not a Bud Light.
Yeah, that's right. It's not a Bud. That was his justification. Okay, Brent Leatherwood of the Southern Baptist Convention. These displays continue to confirm just how far removed from biological and sexual reality our culture is right now. That's the quote, and it's probably what hurts is it's from the Southern Baptist Convention. So they're like, oh, you're just religious. But that is a perfect quote. Biological and sexual reality. That's all this is. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of people that do not think Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Okay, that is a very common belief and has since the history of the world. And so it's our job as Christians to go out and evangelize and to live a faith according to him and show his life abundantly in the resurrection and hope that they convert and they believe that he rose from the dead. They also can't find his body, but you're not allowed to get into those details. You're not a bigot if you don't think Jesus rose from the dead. And to say that, hey, if you turn to me right now, Heather, and say, I'm Frank Sinatra, and I'm like, I love Frank Sinatra, like sing a song, and you're a great singer. So you sing New York, Fly Me to the Moon. And I'm like, I know Heather, like, his songs. It's awesome. I love Frank Sinatra, but you're not him. And you're like, it's not Heather, it's Frank, you bigot. That's where we are. And that's the brilliance of the Matt Walsh, What is a Woman? And you get into all that. But Garth Brooks and everybody else wants us to live in this alternate reality where we just accept falsehood, like basic stuff. Like the sky's not blue. And that is where the trans thing is so different.
And you kind of get the people who are trying to say like, well, we need to be respectful. We need to, like, they're kind of trying to have it both ways. Like, we're going to advance this agenda. We're just going to do so without being so divisive. I think there's kind of a contingent that's saying that. And that's why I love this quote from Reverend Albert Mohler of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. He said, the Dodgers are now quite ready to be anti-Catholic and pro-drag queen, even blasphemous drag queens. And I ask you, where in all of that are you supposed to find middle ground? It doesn't exist. I like that a lot. There's no nuance. There's no possibility of nuance. This is what it is. And for everybody who's listening or watching this podcast, I think it's a great opportunity for us to stop and reflect. For much of human history, Catholics, Protestants didn't exactly get along. And here we see common ground. I can't remember who it was. Was it Peter Kreeft or someone who said, we no longer have the luxury of fighting amongst each other in the body of Christ. We need to, kind of like the Ben Franklin line, like if we don't hang together, we're surely going to hang separately. I think that's where we found ourselves, and I think it's going to be a good thing for Christian unity. And
that's my quote, by the way.
That's your quote?
That I ripped off of Kreeft.
Oh, okay.
Kreeft's quote's much more historical, and I just tried to adjust it to the pro-life movement. But he said, basically, in Northern Ireland, the English and the Protestants and the Catholics quit fighting each other during World War II.
Okay.
Because they no longer had the luxury, and so that's how I ripped it off. But he uses that specific example, which is really good, because we're in this culture war, and they're outwardly saying they're coming after the children, but it's such a bizarre war. You go in, and you're just gonna buy beer, and you pick up Bud Light because you're a guy that drinks Bud Light or a gal that drinks Bud Light. And there's a trans person on there, and you're like, what is this? This is the weirdest can I've ever seen. And you're like, oh, it's a girl. And then you read the thing, and it's like, oh, no, it's a boy, and this is his 365 day. And you're like, what happened to the Bud Light cans that said Bud Light on them? And that goes towards taking your kid to a baseball game or, any of the Target. Target is suburbia moms wandering around. It smells amazing. We got rid of Target in our house like forever ago because they started doing the gay wedding registration before even gay marriage was legal. It was crazy. And, but it was like, Mary Lisa's like, I love Target. Target is like a woman's dream, right? And a guy, and if you like nice stores that sell great stuff, but
it's supposed to be the bougie Walmart.
That's
Walmart. Basically,
and you take and
Target.
You go in there and you just wander around.
If that makes sense. Can you say that? Yeah.
Yeah, with respect to Walmart. But yeah, they go in and all of a sudden they have like the crotch shorts with the trans stuff, and you have your 5-year-old, and that Target, I think, is really people get really offended. Like Target and Starbucks. They like cling to that, and Target took a significant hit, to my surprise, for that, because they have been very pro-pride and all that stuff for way long. They were early in on all that.
They were the canary in the coal mine, because back in 15, 20 years ago, when you saw the LGBT agenda start coming through and they're pushing for gay marriage, it seemed like it was kind of like the Christians versus like the leftists. And then Target came in, Minnesota had a referendum on gay marriage, and Target came in like, wait, we're not fighting the fringe radical leftists who live in their mom's basement. We're fighting corporate America.
Wow. Well, Target's also the one when Minneapolis lost their minds with all the George Floyd stuff and they burned the city down. Do you remember Target executives saying they're looting the Target stores? And they said, we understand you need to take your anger out. Just keep going.
I wonder how their insurance underwriters felt about that.
Well,
not good.
As well as the rest of the community.
Oh.
For encouraging looting in their community.
Right. So it's Target, but for Target to take a hit, I think it's really, I think it's pretty significant. Okay, next on our list is the rainbow logos coming down. I kind of referenced this, but the companies that had the rainbow logo and they removed it. But if you just look at Xbox Pride logo came down the first week of June. The Navy, unbelievable. All our men and women serving. Recruiting's in the toilet. In case y'all don't know.
Yeah.
For our military, it's awful.
I wonder why.
Great for China.
But how are we going to be prepared to fight China or Putin or Islamic terrorism if we don't sufficiently display our what's the name of the flag now?
Pride Progress flag.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to
Yeah.
win a war without that.
We've got to have that on all of our
I'm not sure the Chinese are going to care when you just yell at them that they're bigots because they don't accept you.
Yeah.
Didn't work well in Afghanistan. Okay. The Navy's Pride logos came off social media in one day. Amazon's Instagram account had a Pride promotion last year, not this year. NHL and MLB got rid of Pride warm-up jerseys. NHL commissioner said that they are distraction. That's like courage these days, but it's so true. He's like, that's the like, nobody cares. Leave us alone. This is a distraction. Like we play hockey. And then Starbucks removed Pride decorations. That was the biggest, because Starbucks is the one when all of the gay marriage stuff was happening, the shareholder goes to the meeting and he says, why would we alienate half the country by going all in with all this gay stuff and pride stuff? And the CEO stood up and said, some things are more important than making coffee, which is true unless you're a coffee maker in your Starbucks. That's the most important thing for a company. But basically, we're just going to take on the justice train and alienate 50%.
You can make coffee, but that doesn't mean there's going to be customers to buy it. So
Exactly. but Starbucks was so in. This is a little misconstrued because Starbucks was inconsistent with this. What happened is they said, we're removing it, and which is great. It's shocking. It's probably the biggest thing in here because they started all this garbage with Target years ago. But I didn't go in any Starbucks. I don't drink Starbucks. The mob comes after us. But the pro-life mob, I saw you at the Starbucks. But it was at the front, like at our hotel. Our hotel was connected to a Starbucks, and at the Dobbs event, and they had all their stuff in the front. And then if you walked around DC, some of the Starbucks had nothing. Some of them had it everywhere. So I don't know. But the fact that that was sent down from corporate, it was probably like, they're not going to enforce it, so we'll do it anyway. So some people complied, some people didn't.
yeah, that's what I would guess. Yeah.
But the fact that they even did it is shocking to me. If you would have told me March 1st that Starbucks was going to send something down from corporate, I'd be like, you're living on the moon. Like, I'm not a cynical person, but
It'd be the opposite.
Yeah.
They double down. Yeah.
Totally double down. Okay, next. And this is again, I think this is just the way a country can get worn out on stuff. Polls show Americans rejecting the LGBTQ agenda. Unheard of.
Yeah, it's been just sort of this steady march of progress, as they would like us to believe, that, we're all of us who believe in things like male and female from conception would be just swept away by the tides of history. And in fact, the opposite is happening, that the tide has definitely turned on this front. If you look back just 2 years ago, 40% of Americans believed that there were there were multiple gender identities beyond just male and female, 40%. And that number has dropped now down to 34%. And that's on the surface good. But when you look deeper into the numbers, you see that like every demographic now is more likely to believe that there are only two genders than there were 2 years ago. That includes Democrats, that includes secular people, it includes young people, it includes all of the supposedly progressive demographics. All of them have gotten more, I don't know if conservative is even the right word, but more in accordance with reality over the last 2 years. So the backlash has come.
The last point on here is Generation Z.
Yeah.
That's pretty shocking.
A massive 14% shift in the last couple of years.
Of multiple genders.
Yeah, they're now much more likely to believe that there are just male and female. Which it's hard for me to believe we're having this question.
Well, this is the funny part. And some of them, now half the country believes that we have one moon.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a forced conversation that we have to have. But our point of this podcast is there's a shift.
Yeah.
There is a shift. And all it looked like was like this, like, you know, and it's not happening. We're seeing kind of a market correction certainly with the woke stuff. We've seen it. And this ties into it. This is like the tip of the spear for the woke movement. But gosh, is everything going to be about being gay or trans? I mean, it's kind of like we saw the Disney, like our characters will now we'll have a trans or we'll have a gay princess or all that stuff. And you're just like, we're killing women, number one. We're killing art, number two, and creativity. Richard Dreyfuss came out and said how ridiculous he thinks it is with all the diversity, and you have to have like a gay character. He's like, you need actors and actresses, and you need a great story.
The last couple Pixar films bombed so badly that there's question about whether Pixar will continue to exist as an independent, organization. I don't know, company, however they're structured, branch. It's likely they're going to have to be sort of like absorbed into another production company because they've just bombed. Nobody's going to see these non-binary characters.
But Bud Lightyear bombed, whatever the name of it.
Buzz Lightyear?
Buzz.
That is the greatest Freudian
See, I got
slip
Bud Light
I've
on
ever
my
heard in
mind.
my life. Bud Lightyear.
We got to copyright
I
this.
wish that was on purpose.
Me too. The next one
This is not Bud Light's
but
year,
that's what's going to
so-
happen. They're going to make a Buzz Lightyear, and the Twitter thing will be Bud Lightyear.
Jill, please create an awesome graphic with this.
We need the website. This is going to be huge. We're making
Domain.
t-shirts.
Get
We're
on the
making
domain.
t-shirts.
Oh my gosh.
But whatever the Buzz movie was, because they fired Tim Allen. Remember that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Hanks came out, who's like, pretty liberal guy, and he's like, this is the stupidest thing in the world. Why would they get rid of Tim Allen? It's useless. Like, he said that before the movie came out. And so it bombed. It was like 40% of what the one before it did.
Do you know what my favorite thing about that was too? Is that the executives came out and then insulted the audience for not going and seeing it.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Which I was like,
It's
yeah,
good.
that's what you want to do. You want to tell people how stupid they are for not seeing your movie. That makes you look better.
That's what Garth did.
Yeah, and the same thing.
You're like,
it's,
Garth.
oh gosh, this is sad.
There was like the romantic, like the same-sex romantic comedy that came out, and it was like groundbreaking, right? Groundbreaking. We finally have a romantic comedy with like two dudes. And same thing, nobody went to see it because however progressive you want to be, at the end of the day, like if you're going to like women, guys, anyone that's going to watch a chick flick, they want to see like the traditional romance story, not like a couple of dudes. And they also insulted their audience and said they just weren't intelligent enough to appreciate great filmmaking.
Here's why this is so condescending to the homosexual people, the people that live this lifestyle, is they're discovering that they've been patted on the head and told, we accept you. And people don't, deep down. They're like, I don't want my kids to be gay. That's one of their big outbursts. People say that to us, but people put it online like, well, you wait till your kid's gay. Like, they're wanting our kids to be gay. It's like a punishment. I thought,
Yeah, for
but
punishment.
isn't being gay great?
Yeah.
Like, what? Why are you using that as a weapon? We'll see what happens when your kids get married, Steve.
I mean, we hear that on the abortion front too,
Yeah.
right? Like, if they find the gay gene, you're not going to abort your gay children. Like, of course we're not.
But it's used as if it's negative. It's not used as if it's positive. We'll see what happens when your kid goes to Harvard, Steve Carlin. Easy your life is. But I mean, it's not an insult. You're like, wow, my kid went to Harvard. That's really something, It's used as an insult, but they have been patted on the head. And what's being revealed, and that movie proved it, is nobody wants to watch this stuff. Like, they're not into it. They're not interested in it. They don't want it shoved down their throat. A lot of people think it's gross or unnatural. People get offended at that, but that's just reality. And they've been told, I think in a very just condescending, like, oh yeah, love is love. And then they're just like, don't they have a lot of partners? That whole thing, that's what's happening. And the screaming bigotry at people who don't go see the movie, I think that's run its course. The bigotry thing has just run its course. Like, we don't hate you, we love you, but you're like forcing it on us if we don't believe in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I would consider objectively good that I don't want like thrown at me just constantly nonstop. There's a lot of good causes that, you know, the NFL has their month for this, month for that. And I'm actually not here for activism. I'm here because I'd like to watch a football game once a week and then we can move on with our lives. But I think there's this effort to pat everybody on the head. Certainly this is like the first and foremost among them, but you've kind of mentioned, like, do we need a theme night for every different subgroup at a baseball game? I don't think so.
We don't need Christian night. They have praise and worship night at the Astros. You're like, you don't need that. It's nice. I think it makes people feel good. But like, you can go watch a baseball game.
Yeah, if people like baseball, they're going to go to a baseball game.
It's the formula. Honor the military, national anthem, first pitch, first inning. That's it. And that covers everything. And, you know, maybe people don't even want the military or the flag. And that didn't work with the NFL, right? Didn't work with the NBA at all. So you can't even touch that, which is good. But all of this stuff is so forced. The other thing is that it is 2023. I think we live in a very tolerant society, you know, on some fronts, very intolerant on others. But I don't know anybody who hates gay people.
No.
Like, I don't, you know, the whole, like, you hate women, you want to control women. Like, we have no interest in controlling women.
Who has time?
Who has time? And the whole thing of hate, and I don't think a lot of that lasted. Remember how people started making fun of hope and change after a while with Obama? And when he came out, it was like, oh my gosh, just take me to heaven, Obama. You're the Messiah. The hope and change. I think that's what's happened with hate and love is love and all this stuff where you're like, look, I think you have a sexual preference. It's not mine. I don't believe in it, but that's irrelevant. You can live your life and let's just move on. And that they had to say, well, everybody's a hater. And I think Christianity is very weak right now. I don't see like a big, strong Christian bigotry towards gays. I think it's quite the opposite. I think they're kind of like not wanting to deal with it, like most people in our culture. But the whole, which is worse, not wanting to deal with someone. But the whole notion that like people are out there like hating gay people, and I know that there's hate. You know, the guy shot up the Orlando club, and you know all that kind of stuff. But that happens with everybody. That happens with Catholic nuns in Africa. That happens with pro-lifers. That happens with pro-abortion people. I mean, any kind of movement, you have like some kind of like random act of violence or whatever. But this isn't the whole idea when they said that the Nashville shooter was trans, that trans people were now in danger. Like, no one believes that. It's not true. The Dylan kid from the Bud Light, they still call him Dylan. I don't know how that's not offensive. Does he have a girl name? But whatever.
I think I'd
kept
have
Dylan?
to look at this.
Why did I even ask
I'd
this
have to
question?
research this, but I think he changed the spelling to be Dylan with a Y.
Oh, like Dylan can be like, okay,
Like,
okay.
which you have
Like
that
Pat.
right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Robin.
I
Okay.
could be totally wrong.
Okay.
We'd have to fact check on
Right,
that. But
let's-
I remember seeing his name in writing one day, and I thought, is that spelled with a Y? I don't remember seeing that a year ago when he was
fled
first.
to Latin
I don't know.
America, saying his life was in danger. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But this whole notion, like,
I'm sure his was.
Probably, I guess.
Anybody that has that amount of celebrity,
But that's
like,
the problem is that's the MO with everything.
yeah, that everybody is.
I don't want to
that's-
put a trans flag in my business. You are now putting trans people in danger.
Yeah.
They've gone as far as they can with the rhetoric. They've started to say that like not putting the trans flag out is genocide, and you really can't you can't push the needle any further than that. And so they're just kind of like they back themselves up against the wall, I think.
Your silence speaks volumes is kind of the philosophy that's going on with that. If you don't have the flag, then clearly you're supporting the other side.
Goes back to one of the great Seinfeld episodes. Who doesn't want to wear the ribbon?
Yes,
Show the
exactly.
clip.
The ribbon.
So true. So true for Seinfeld.
That exactly personifies
my
what's
goodness.
happening today. Because that's the exact thing that's happening in corporations now. If you refuse to wear your name badge with that or the lanyard with the Pride Progress, whatever, if you refuse to put it in your email, if you refuse to put your pronouns, all the things that they're cramming down the throats of all of their employees, then, yeah.
And
how dare you?
By the way, we're all talking about Bud Light and America and all this. We haven't even gotten to Europe. Europe's supposed to be all progressive and way ahead of us. We'll get to Europe in a minute. But first, here we go. Public policy progress. This year alone, 12 states passed laws to limit or ban gender-affirming care.
Quote, gender-affirming care.
Quote, gender-affirming care.
Yeah, for minors in particular, Texas is going to investigate it as child abuse, which common sense, I can't remember if I've said this to you before, Sean. I don't think I have to you, Heather. My grandfather stormed the beaches of Normandy, and so much of this stuff, we look at it and like, how would we explain this to Grandpa Joe? It's controversial that Texas will investigate child abuse for those who are mutilating the bodies of children. But good for Texas. God bless Texas.
Amen.
But for your grandfather, God bless him. I love when you bring him up. I think it's sad. I think it's like, don't talk to Grandpa about this.
No.
Like, it's going to break his heart.
There's an element of like, when he passed, we were very sad. And there's a little bit of like, I'm glad he doesn't have to see this crap.
No, he's being protected from it in some ways. Okay. Florida banned gender-affirming care, in quotes, for minors and prohibited public funding of it. Tennessee defines sex as determined by anatomy and genetics and protects teachers from being fired or disciplined for not using preferred pronouns.
The fact that we have a law to say this.
It's awful.
Gosh.
But that it's happening.
Yeah.
Because it starts here and it starts to spread, because now you have to have laws. These poor teachers. Plus, I have a lot of respect for teachers, because I'm always impressed with the kids, the teachers that teach my children. Like, they know their names, and it's like week 2 of the school, and I'm like trying to figure out who the teacher is. I mean, it's great. How are they going to remember that's Jonathan, but I got to call him her?
Yeah.
And then you can be prosecuted for it? I mean, these are just basic laws.
These policy changes, I think, do the same thing that Dobbs did, which is it has destroyed the myth of inevitability. You can turn back. It's never too late to turn back from your evils. And I think that should be a great sign of hope on abortion, on marriage, on gender. All this stuff should be a great sign. Nothing is inevitable. All you have to do is make the right decision, and you can turn back toward truth.
And the truth will set us free. That's all this boils down to. Somebody can say, forget you, Steve. You're a hater, and Heather, you're a hater, and Sean, you're a hater. But you cannot flip a switch and deny biological reality and the history of civilization, which is that there are boys and there are girls. There are men and there are women. It is in our bones that we can identify somebody who's, been dead for 100 years, or 500 years, whether they were a man or a woman. Like, this is our identity, and it is good.
Yeah, yeah.
The dangerous thing about the trans movement is that it is a complete rejection of self. It's not becoming who you are, it's denying who you are. And nothing would drive me more crazy than having to convince myself that I was a woman because I felt like it one day, or that I was Frank Sinatra because I was singing his song in the shower and I'm like, yeah, this is happening. I mean, it never ends because you can't do it because that's not who you are. And that's why Cardinal Sarah said, this is a satanic movement. It's a rejection of God's love and of your own beautiful identity.
Yeah.
And they can never get away from that. That's why you can say, you're full of hate or something. It has nothing to do with that. The Bud Light kid is a boy. He's a man. That's why it's weird. Mm-hmm. And that's why, I guess that's why they put him on the can. They didn't put Shania Twain or somebody celebrating whatever 50 years of being a woman in country music or whatever. They didn't celebrate a real woman. They didn't celebrate a real man. They celebrated a man who thinks he's a woman.
Mm-hmm. And he's... side note too, he recently came out with a video that was really sad. He's just sitting in his car talking about how he decided to tell his parents that he likes women and he thinks he wants to be married and have kids someday. And so I believe he said it was his father who said, so you're going to impregnate a woman then? And he said, no, she would be getting me pregnant. And I just Oh God, like
Because I don't want a
watch
kid
that.
from a real woman. And that is why.
You don't have the ability to do that. Like, this isn't rocket science. This isn't even... Kindergartners can understand this until they get... until teachers get a hold of them to confuse the crap out of them. But... God have mercy.
That is such an attack on real women.
Yeah.
I mean, it is such an insult to real women. It's just, it's unbelievable.
Maybe we'll just identify as pregnant women eventually. Maybe that's already happening. Anyways, move on.
I'll start identifying as a thunder duck so I can get that uniform. Welcome to the team.
Okay,
Look, Sean, you can say you're a thunder duck. You can dress up like a thunder duck. Doesn't make you a thunder duck.
Oh, man. All right, let's go to Europe. Europe has hit the brakes somehow. For decades, European progressives ran years ahead of us, obviously. But they're seeing the error. By the way, this prime minister of Italy, fantastic.
Yes.
Love her. She's gold.
Yes.
The head of the EU, the wonderful woman, the Catholic lady with, I think she has 5 or 6 kids. Europe is back. And when she was told that was bigotry because Europe is back means Christianity has power or relevance. So it was like a hostile thing.
Interesting that assumption was made.
Monks and sisters running around Europe educating people and dragging in the poor who were denied education and giving them one. Terrible.
The horrors of beautiful architecture, scientific development, universal education.
Basically like saying like the Inquisition starts tomorrow. That's how the media took it. And so anyways, okay. They have countries limiting minors from using puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and transition-related surgery, including, this is shocking, the countries that are doing this. You're going to fall over if you're listening to this. Norway, Finland, Sweden, the UK, and the Netherlands. The Netherlands in like 2008, and everybody's like, they're nuts. They proposed a law that you could have your baby, take him or her home for 6 months, and then come back and have them killed.
Euthanized, yeah.
Euthanized. The law was rejected, but it had like 20% or something. You're just like, what are we voting on? And so, that now the Netherlands is like, hey, you got a cold? You're a goner. And the Netherlands is like, I don't know if boys can be girls.
Yeah, this should be encouraging because like you said, for years, if you kind of wanted to look where we're heading in the U.S., like Europe does gay marriage, okay, and then we follow 10 years or however long later, Europe's doing this, Europe's doing that. We were following them in all of their worst impulses. And now, like, we've kind of caught up. They've kind of turned back and we're still running. It's like when Ireland legalized abortion. Like, hey, Ireland, do you realize the rest of the world is kind of waking up to what a horror this has been for the last 50 years? I think it's a similar thing right now where Europe has recognized, okay, I think we went too far this time. And America's like, oh, hold on, we're coming.
We're coming, exactly. And these are the most liberal countries in Europe.
Yeah, the Netherlands
Norway
is
crazy.
Yeah.
So is Finland. I don't know if it's because it's cold, but it's just secular beyond secular and wealthy. A lot of money in Norway. And so they have everything. They don't have children. They have plenty of money. They have clean streets, all this stuff. And then they're like, we just can't start becoming women or women becoming men. Okay, this is another one. This is a great thing, and this is like, there's the two sides. There's the actual victims where the sexual abuse and the suicide rate and all of the stuff of how somebody actually grows up and has gender dysphoria, which is the real term, gender dysphoria. There's that group. And that's how this kind of started, but that's gone. Now it's the fad of, well, now maybe I'm a furry, or it's just become a trend. The same with the homosexual stuff. Only 4% of the U.S. population identifies as gay. It's 4%.
But I think for like Gen Z and millennials, it's up over 20%, which just shows
Yeah.
on the other end of that spectrum how contrived it all is, how much of a fad it is.
Right.
I think that was a Gallup poll that said it was 22% of Gen Z identify as LGBTQ, IA, etc., which means that that's even less that would identify then as as transgender alone. But yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is no, you're not. You're just bored and spend too much time on TikTok.
It's trendy to do. Yeah.
But those who were really serious about it, who did the full...
Yeah,
they committed
the chop,
surgery,
whatever you want to say. I don't know how to say it without
castration.
getting thrown off of. Yeah, castration. Thank you. The detransitioners. So they're all coming out. This is like the Planned Parenthood workers, right? The lawsuits are starting. So you have an 18-year-old named Kayla. She tried to transition to male when she was 12. She now regrets it and is suing doctors who provided her with puberty blockers and male hormone drugs after 75 minutes of vetting her.
Yeah.
I wonder what other massive life-changing, life-altering diagnosis they would spend 75 minutes on. I mean, think about you've got a possible cancer diagnosis, God forbid. You're gonna have the biopsy, you're gonna have all the lab work, you're gonna have the symptom checks, you're gonna go in and you're gonna get a second opinion, maybe you're gonna get a third opinion, and here, like, this is inalterable. She wasn't in any danger of death, so it's not like they had to rush the decision, but they did, and now she's going to pay for that for the rest of her life.
I think about this all the time when you're at the doctor, that we're just going in and we're giving these minors these drugs. I could have foot surgery. You know, I have these horrible feet, so I'm getting foot surgery next month finally, and I want my doctor to quit telling me about it, like, because it's like overkill. I'm like,
all the risks associated.
I trust you.
Yeah.
Knock me out and like just fix it, you know.
Yeah.
But all the details, and I'm not really into blood unless it's in a movie. And so I'm just sitting here going, look, he's got to like correct my foot and redo some stuff, and he's talking for like an hour over multiple appointments. And yet, if I went in and said, I want to be a woman, or if one of my kids went in and said, I'm a boy, I want to be a girl, 75 minutes? And they start prescribing you drugs? It's absolutely insane. And it's like abortion in that sense, where it's not real health care, because real health care doesn't do that. You go, my stepdad got a stent in his heart, or your relative gets a hip replacement. All this stuff is just on and on and on, and they inform you, and it's great, and you want all the information. Not in my case, but it's great. This isn't healthcare. This is an optional, completely unnecessary, dangerous interjection of nature. And you're taking a healthy person and mutilating them, and it takes them 75 minutes. I hope Kayla just mops the floor in the lawsuit. This is great. The lawyer argues that Kayla was never obviously warned about the finality of the medical decisions, because she was 12. And the doctors coerced the attempted sex change by warning the family it's better to have a son than a dead daughter.
Yeah.
And this is this ongoing fad of, let me do what I want or I'll kill myself.
This is what the psychologists are trained to say now. A lot of people are coming forward saying that who are not in favor of their sons and daughters making these life-altering decisions, they're being told this by doctors and psychologists, and it's really sad. There's a really good book that's out there by, I believe, Dr. Ryan Anderson. I've actually in the middle of reading it now, but it's called When Harry Became Sally.
Yeah, it's a famous book that I think has been banned.
Mm-hmm. Somehow I got it right before it was banned from Amazon.
It's like To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah. So, but in it though, I find it interesting because it actually is very sensitive and to transgender people and to anybody who is an activist on that side, and he shares stories that are publicized in different various sources across the world from people who have detransitioned. And he makes it a point in the book, which I really appreciated, to say that these people are not, that are coming forward with their stories and detransitioning, that are warning essentially about this. A lot of them are not like total 180. disagree completely with transgenderism. They're actually very supportive still of somebody being able to transition. But what they're coming forward and saying is, while their stories should be heard, our stories should also be heard too, and not censored, because they're all being censored.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with women who have had abortions.
Yeah.
You don't regret your abortion. That's not a thing that happens.
You got religion.
Yeah. And so they're saying, like, our stories should also be shared. We should be, like in Kayla's situation, we should have been informed. We were not properly informed of all of the ramifications of this. And if you think about it, there's not any studies long term that are out about this. And they're claiming, these elitists are claiming, oh, this is totally fine and there's no risks, which anybody that says for any type of major procedure like this that there's no risks, run far away.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, because that's ridiculous.
This gender industry is the 21st century big tobacco. There's going to be hell to pay. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like. The lawsuits are starting. I mean, how long did it take the American Cancer Society to acknowledge a link between smoking and cancer? Longer than it ought to have.
Yeah.
You can't. No one was saying you have to let people smoke, and you got to allow smoking in restaurants, or the smokers are going to commit suicide. And the great, the great
Wow.
injustice of this is that it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Suicide rate is through the roof for these people when they transition, because they're not happy, because it's not who they are, and they're treating a symptom. There's some wound, there's some psychological problem that needs to be worked out. You need help. It's like bearing mental illness. We're supposed to be so aware about mental illness now, and there's supposed to be a comfort level of talking about mental illness, and yet when we clearly see it, we're like, oh no, we're all good here, you know? And it's also mentally ill to use suicide as a way to get what you want. I mean, that's like the boyfriend in high school. I can't live without you unless we have sex. It's just like, what? I'm going to kill myself if you break up with me. All of that is, and of course, as I mentioned, it's the total opposite with this. But I don't like the suicide as a threat. I think it's sensational, and it's just not accurate.
Right.
They're going the other way, and their suicide rate skyrockets. It's a path to suicide. It's not a safety net from it, and nobody wants to talk about that. But I'll just review these really quick, because Pride Month did take a hit, and it's going to be really interesting. We'll log this obviously and come back as we get into May of 2024. This will be a presidential issue. I think the way Pride Month went, I think Bud Light, I think the Dodgers, but we're going to see it all flare up, pun intended, in May, because they're going to come and they're going to say, hey, are you going to have the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence? Are you going to do a transgender beer can? You know, we'll see what Bud Light looks like in 9 months. Do they have a new CEO?
And we know that Biden can't help himself on this stuff. Bud Light may wake up and at least find a way to backpedal, and Target might find a way to kind of like de-emphasize it. But I don't know. Biden has been full headfirst jump into this pool. And I mean, that's the first time I ever heard of this Dylan guy, was when he got to visit the White House. I don't think he'll be able to help himself. So it'll be front and center for sure.
I'm not convinced Biden knows what's going on.
He might be reminded that he's supposed to be all in on this, and that children are supposed to be transitioning.
All right. So here's how it proved that Pride Month took a big hit. There was the business backlash. There was the great unity of many conservatives. There was the rainbow logos coming off corporate America. The polls showing that Americans are rejecting the LGBTQ agenda. We saw public policy. We saw Europe distancing itself from the movement, and now we see the detransitioners coming out. And you're right, they get so silenced, but they won't be silenced forever. I think that happened. Look at Bernard Nathanson. Everybody was like, "Hey, you founded NARAL, you saw an abortion." Yeah, but the former worker thing was not a thing. until recently.
Well, especially because he claimed to do 75,000 abortions.
Right.
So people
were like,
whatever.
You
Yeah.
convert.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was he converted and Carol Everett converted, and it just kind of sat there. And that was abortion of former workers. And then really...
And Norma McCorvey.
And Norma, but she wasn't a worker. She was just kind of a convert.
She was.
Oh, that's right. But I mean, that the impetus is that she was
the Jane Roe. Yeah.
When Abby converted, it just seemed like it was a modern day thing, and everybody had seen ultrasounds and the floodgates. And then, of course, she's helped hundreds of workers. We've helped over 250. But now it's just common. Workers quit, and I think they're going to quit even more over this. So we need to pray for these detransitioners and pray for all these people. This is a mess. It's an absolute mess, and it's one that we just have to say no to. It's not good for anyone, and it's not rooted in any kind of scientific, natural, or spiritual truth. So with that, thank you. Please rate, review, and share this podcast. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Be sure to get your copy of Scalpel and the Soul. If you buy it directly from 40 Days for Life, you will get a signed copy by Dr. Haywood Robinson. So please do that at 40daysforlifegear.com, and we will see you next time.